All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's convening of the Vibrant Hawaii Economy and Education streams. My name is Ashley Kirkowitz. I chair the economy stream. Joining us today are the chairs of the SED stream, Farah Marie Gomes, as well as Resilience Hub's Maggie Kahoiloa. We're going to start with our grounding statement, then move on to our participant poll to see who is joining us for today's conversation. Farah is going to provide an overview of the work of the education and SED streams and how they have converged over the last few weeks to meet on economic diversification. And then we'll segue into our health and wellness panel discussion with our featured speakers today. All right, to kick us off, Danny, can you start us off with our grounding statement? You can just read what's on the screen.
Vibrant Hawaii is a growing community that commits to individual and collective mo'o kuleana to increase equitable opportunities to build wealth, an abundant reservoir of human, social, natural, and financial capital that we can contribute and draw upon.
Thank you. Misty? Thank you. Maggie?
We value equity and belonging, and we demonstrate this by being willing to let go of assumptions and biases about each other, speaking up when we recognize barriers that prevent us from participating, prospering, and reaching our full potential, promoting full family engagement and participation, and raising our own and our collective belief that wealth, abundance, and prosperity is not a pie. More for others does not mean less for ourselves.
Thank you. Bennett?
This one? Or?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. We value aloha. We demonstrate this by acknowledging that aloha is unique to Hawaii. It is from this place, by valuing aloha, we value the vast and unique genius of the people of Hawaii, and we prioritize the knowledge, skills, and solutions of its people, recognizing that aloha is an action modeled to us by our environment. And we validate its aloha through aloha aina, and our willingness to suffer a little so that no one has to suffer a lot.
Thank you. Robert? Robert, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. We value our oma kakuleana, and we demonstrate this by a commitment to empowerment rooted in our belief that everyone has skills and abilities, but needs circumstances and opportunities to express them, promoting language that recognizes a person's abilities and shared ownership and accountability. And if any one of us stumbles, we all fall because we are all connected.
Thank you. Joelle?
We value flexibility and learning that leads to transformation, and we demonstrate this by being honest without shame. When we don't know, being courageous, adaptive leaders, even when it calls for difficult conversations, and even when our outcomes look like failure. Demonstrating ahunui and ha'aha'a as we hold tension to achieve change. Each hold one piece that is part of something bigger.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I am going to be launching our participant poll. There are 5 questions, and to get through them all, you're going to need to scroll through. And in order to submit the poll, you must complete all questions. I'll give you a couple of minutes. Thank you.
I remind you that we've had 8 million COVID infections in the country so far this year. We had 39 million flu infections last year.
Okay, thank you for completing the questions. I'll share the results with you. Does everyone see that on their screen? Okay, great. All right, we have a lot of people that see themselves as a support for this industry, meaning that they have resources to contribute. A few people identifying as leads, that this is their primary area of expertise, or keys, that they have substantial expertise or something meaningful to contribute. We also have a number of weavers. So weavers, we need you to do your thing and bring more folks to these conversations. And we have a number of individuals that are interested in this particular topic. Overwhelming number of engaged citizens here at this call today. Also representation heavily from business, education, and social services. A couple of folks from philanthropy and government, no one from the faith community participating in today's call. In terms of geographic representation, more than half of the folks on today's call hail from the Hilo area, but we do have representation all around the islands, including someone that is joining us from off islands. One person here identifies themselves as youth, as well as one person identifying as kupuna. Thank you all for being part of today's conversation. All right, Farah, do you want to provide an overview of what the SED stream and education streams are doing?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ashley. And thank you to everyone for joining us this morning. The chair for the education stream of Vibrant Hawaii is Chancellor for Hawaii Community College, Rachel Salamsas. And unfortunately, she's not able to join us this morning. So I just wanted to give a quick overview of what the education stream is working on. And primarily, they have identified, or they have broken themselves out into 4 subgroups. The 4 are there listed on your screen on the right side. So one group focusing on AINA-based education, another group looking at equitable access to education. A key note on this one is we have differentiated between equitable access to education and equitable education. 2 very different topic areas, and this stream is honing in on the access piece. A third group looking at workforce development, and a 4th subgroup looking at transformational leadership. So we want to mahalo Chancellor Salamsas for her leadership in the area of the education stream. And it's really with partnership that we bring these panels to you all. I do want to say that there will be another session in 2 weeks, and that one will be focused on education for those of you that are interested in joining us then. So the purpose of these panels is really to bring together individuals who we view as experts in this particular topic, healthcare and wellness, and looking at how we might be able to inform the next revisioning of, or reversion of, the CEDS document. So CEDS, C-E-D-S, is the acronym for Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. It is a document that Hawaii County has. We're working off of the 2016 to 2020 version. There was a previous one that took us from 2011 to 2015. And we are now at the stages of looking forward for the next 5 years at what we're going to say about the 2021 to 2025 version. So these panel discussions are bringing together experts from various fields to help discuss and really come up with what might some actions and goals be for the next version of the CEDS that brings us to the Vibrant Hawaii vision that many in our community are speaking about. So we want to mahalo all of the panelists today for joining us, and we'll just go ahead and jump right in here. Oh, in 1 minute. I do want to mention that the recordings for all of the panels that have happened to date can be found on our Vibrant Hawaii Economy Stream tab. Take a look at them there. We have already completed 4 panels. They are listed on your screen. And today we are hosting healthcare and wellness. In 2 weeks, we will have a session on education. And what's not listed is we also added another panel as a result of technology being such a broad topic that we wanted to have a follow-up discussion in that area. So there will be one more panel, not yet shown on the screen, but that is scheduled for November 19th. So stay tuned for additional details on our upcoming panels.
Awesome, thanks, Farah. At this time, we're gonna go ahead and introduce the panelists that are joining us today.
All right, and it is with great pleasure that I am introducing Kimo Alameda. Dr. Alameda is a graduate of St. Joseph's High School and earned his doctorate in psychological, educational, and cultural studies from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. He has over 15 years of executive experience in state and county government and is now the CEO of Bay Clinic. Dr. Alameda is also a licensed psychologist, teaches at Hawaiʻi Community College, coaches basketball at Hilo High School, and has his own youth athletic program. He and his wife, Star, are the proud parents of 7 children. Welcome, Dr. Alameda.
Go Cardinals. Joining us today is Emily Emmon. She's co-founder and executive director of Ho'ola Veteran Services, also doing business as Ho'ola Farms located in Hilo. Since 2014, Emily has held influential positions, including service as the Hawaii Island Field Rep for Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard and Hawaii's Elizabeth Dole Foundation Fellow, where she has continued to advocate for veterans and their caregivers living in rural areas. Emily's work has led to speaking roles at the Farmer Veteran Coalition Conference, Elizabeth Dole Foundation Hidden Heroes event, 2 Department of Defense conferences, and most recently, the U.S. Conference of Mayors as a panelist to discuss transitioning military personnel, the role of the caregiver, and the importance of mental health and wellness services available to all parties involved. Her drive and dedication have been motivated by her personal journey as a caregiver, caring for her husband, John, who is 100% combat injured military veteran living with traumatic brain injury and PTSD. Thank you, Emily, for joining us and sharing your mana'o today.
And I'm also pleased to introduce you all today to Danny Goya. Danny Goya is a trauma-informed trainer and wellness and resilience coach. Mr. Goya is an educator with over 15 years of teaching experience, a community connector, and a TIC Course 1 and 2 trainer for the Community Resilience Initiative. Mr. Goya includes Western sciences and indigenous cultural practices in a 2-lens approach to community issues, historical and situation trauma, and wellness and resilience building. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Goya.
Our final panelist is Misty Pacheco. She's an associate professor of kinesiology and exercise sciences department at the University of Hawaii at Hilo, as well as a founding member of Maika'i Health Corporation, an innovative community health center in East Hawaii built with a public health foundation and focused on education and training. Misty has nearly 17 years in the health fields, having worked in the public and private health sectors, nonprofits, and global public health. She also served in the Peace Corps as a public health volunteer in Kenya. Welcome, Misty. All right, at this time, we are going to ask our panelists to provide some opening remarks as to the work that they have been doing in the healthcare and wellness industry over the course of their career, and to also whet our palates a little bit around what they see as some potential opportunities for us to further elevate this industry so that it can be part of building a resilient economy for Hawaii. Kimo, can we start with you?
Oh, okay. Aloha kako. So yeah, Kimo Alameda, Bay Clinic. And if you don't know, Bay Clinic's a federally qualified health center, which means that we get funding from the federal government specifically to service the poor or near poor. And so we're the only health entity in the state actually that we have 14 of us. So we got 3 on this island, Bay Clinic, and you get Hamakua Health, and then get West Hawaii Community Health Center. And we have a bunch of federal guidelines. One of them is we cannot reject or refuse anybody who wants healthcare. And we have a board. And so right now in East Hawaii, we have a service area. So East Hawaii is our service area. We serve about 21,000 patients. About 17,000 are Quest eligible. So again, targeting the poor or near poor. We provide a host of services from, of course, primary health care to behavioral health, to substance abuse counseling, dental. We have a pharmacy, in-house pharmacy. We also have contract pharmacies. We also just started our street medicine program. So we go out every Wednesday night to the streets, and we have a lot of patients who are homeless. And so we want to make sure that we increase access to care. Many of them don't have transportation to come to the health center, so we go out and we provide that. We also collaborate with the county on COVID testing. For example, this Saturday, going out to Ocean View, sending some of our staff to partner with the county Premier Medical out in that area. So very connected to the community. Bay Clinic's been around for 35 years plus. I think we're on 38 now. And it's definitely a fabric of the community. So it's good to be here, good to be part of this forum. And I'm excited to hear what the other guest has to say. And putting all our minds together, we can certainly make a more vibrant Hawaii, for sure.
Thank you, Kimo. Emily, some opening remarks.
As Ashley mentioned, my name is Emily Emmons, co-founder of Ho'ola Farms, known here as Ho'ola Farms. The lens in which I come from today is that of a caregiver first, and then second as a program developer and director. I'm the caregiver for my husband, as Ashley mentioned, who suffered from a traumatic brain injury and PTSD from his combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. As a caregiver, I have navigated both the government and private healthcare sectors for the last 14 years now. And I've come to understand that although our medical professionals do their best to provide care, there is not a magic pill for everything. It's really up to the patient and their family to find and navigate their new normal. So at our house, we do that by walks with our ohana, gardening together, and spending a lot of time being grateful for the beauty that surrounds us in our aina here. We look for ways to include our community and support each other and ask for help when we need it. My personal journey has led me to my work advocating with the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and the Farmer Veteran Coalition, all the way up to Congress, to advocate for mental health and wellness practices and services to be incorporated into programs that are dedicated to supporting people. So where we would have normally had just an agriculture program, we've now included health and wellness services into those programs. We have a licensed social worker, we do yoga and meditation along with other practices that can be done at home and help sustain the mental health and sustainability long-term for those who need it. So that's kind of the lens in which I come from here today, caregiver first, and then program developer and director second. So thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Danny?
Yeah, aloha. Good morning, everyone. Mahalo for Vibrant Hawaii and all they do. Just hearing the bios of the panelists, I was thinking maybe I clicked into the wrong room. I don't know if I should be on this call, but like Dr. Alameda, I'm just, want to hear from everyone. In my prior life, like I said, I was a school teacher, but I just finished working with the Partners in Development Foundation. I was there for about 14 years, and I started a homeless 2-gen preschool, 2 is on your island, and the program I created, Kapa'alanas in Keaukaha and Kings Landing. I also started an adjudicated boys' home for a residential male facility for males 13 to 17. It's an alternative to youth incarceration. I kind of share all these things because in my work in developing these programs, working with rural and remote communities, working with Kanaka in particular, going upstream for me was understanding, how do we secure attachments? How do we secure caregiver and child attachments? And how do we, in a way, kind of clear the LY so that there's access and equity for the simple social services that all people need to thrive? So that's kind of where I come at today, as knowing, understanding the Western sciences with brain development and healthy attachment, and pairing it with kind of a lens from the indigenous side where, if we're looking at culture and historical trauma, what were the original instructions? How did the people thrive to to sustain life for thousands of years before Western contact. And if we can meld those two worlds together, I'm pretty sure we can work with community to identify issues and come up with tangible, strategic, and pono goals. Mahalo.
Thank you, Danny. Misty? I'm sorry, we're having a hard time hearing you. It's coming out really garbled. No, it sounds robotic. I'm wondering if there's a way maybe you can mute the computer audio and maybe dial in with your phone so we can still see you, but then we can hear you over the phone. Thanks, everyone. It amazes me that we're able to do this like every single week with like no glitches. The wonders of technology. Just a kind reminder to folks, if you have questions along the way, feel free to pop them into the chat.
At the point of our last panelist providing opening remarks, and we'll come back to Misty as soon as we're able to get her looped back in. For this first part of the panel, what we're going to do is throw out a few questions that we have prepared in advance. Some are very similar to questions that we have asked other panels so far. And it will be round robin for the most part. If you have contribution to that particular question, panelists, please unmute your mic and feel free to jump in. Participants for today's call, if you have questions, please put them over into the chat. We are going to, in about 40 minutes or so, wrap up this portion of questions, and we will turn to the questions from participants on today's call. So we ask you to keep yourselves muted until we get to the participant section of today's panel. So to kick us off today, we would like to just start really with broad terms. In what ways do you see healthcare and wellness as an industry contributing to a more vibrant Hawaii? And Kimo, Danny, or Emily, if any of you would like to start us off with a response to that question.
Okay, I can start. Yeah, so I've been thinking about that. So, the benefit of having a lot of kids is they ask a lot of questions. So, I remember about 10 years ago, my number 3 child asked, "Hey, Dad, where is mental health?" Because, he I was a psychologist, he knew a little bit about what I did. But that question was very profound, where is mental health? And of course, my immediate response, "Oh, it's in your head." But then my wife, no, it's in church, right? And then my older daughter, "Oh, no, it's in school." So where is mental health? And then, so where is health, right? So is it just in the health center? Is it in the hospital? Where is health? And, Danny talked a little bit about our indigenous health and historic trauma. And so, when I look at that, and I think about that question, how do we see health and wellness as an industry? To me, health is everywhere. And so when we're talking about health and wellness, we cannot not talk about homelessness, cannot not talk about our educational system, about food security, about domestic issues, because, there's a lot of studies on the social determinants of health, and my prior career was the Department of Health. I was the executive for the Office of Health Equity. And so we would look at all the health disparities, you know, across the state. And it was sad to see that basically your zip code was a better predictor of your health than your genetic code. And so what does that tell us, right? So how I see it and the industry of health, it has to be collaboration with government, state, federal government. Like, it's really a kako thing, and that's where I'm sitting right now in my head. So I offer that. I tagged Danny.
Okay, I guess I made it. So as I mentioned, I was a school teacher. So that was about maybe 20 years ago, and we're teaching about how it was, you know, like how the time of Jefferson, where they owned slaves, and at that point it was sort of an accepted, you know, norm. But the whole thing was about being careful in judging, you know, a social issue on generations past based off of today's norms, and that we're going to be judged for something in someday, which opened the door. My students asked me, what are we going to be judged with by our generation? This was 20 years ago. So I said probably the way we treated gay, lesbian relationships, and definitely mental health and suicide awareness. The second part was a pretty, you know, that was a good answer, but, you know, I failed to mention that at that time I was teaching at a very conservative Christian school, and that didn't go over well with the school administration and parents. But, you know, it kind of is what it is. I do think mental health awareness and the state of it needs to be addressed for us to move forward a vibrant Hawaii. And also just, you know, I go to, and then I echo what, you know, Dr. Almeida said, the access and equity issues. You know, in my Kapalana program in YNI, if we find somebody with a speech delay, finding a speech pathologist and OT, it's been pretty easy, right? We would work through Easter seals, and we could actually prevent special ed because there's a window in brain and social emotional development between birth to 5. That if it's worked on there, then you can change the trajectory of that child. It was kind of frustrating and shocking that we couldn't find those readily initially when we were working on Hawaii Island, and that we had to wait for people to come over from Oahu for the speech pathologist because it just stacked. And this was a few years ago. I'm sure things changed by then, but I don't like the Honolulu-centric appeal, as it was mentioned about your zip code versus your genetic code, where that's access to services. So that's definitely one thing where if we can actually prevent special ed on the front end, then we can't. Then we have some issues there, as well as the access to higher, high quality early learning systems. The other thing I would want to kind of mention is, I was working on this thing with Kamehameha Schools. We only have 6 pediatric, and the Hawaii Community Foundation, we only have 6 pediatric neurologists in the state of Hawaii, and they're all located on Oahu. You know, this hits home for me because recently my daughter had suffered some concussions. She practices MMA and needed that consultation. This happened last month with her concussion, and our earliest appointment we could get was January, just because, again, there's only 6 pediatric neurologists, and with her status, it wasn't immediate and intermarried, and we just had to basically wait in the queue. So that's challenging. So I think those are the things that I would think we would need to work on: mental health awareness, access and equity to intervention services, and the increase of pediatric neurologists.
Thank you, Danny. Emily, did you want to chime in on this question?
I would just say that, you know, a vibrant Hawaii, we're planting the seeds today for food and nourishment for our community tomorrow. And so I think Danny touched on this as well, but we need to be looking now for things that are going to be contributing long-term. And that isn't always through the healthcare system. I think we need to be empowering our community to take personal commitment to striving for a healthier community together, and to plant those seeds now, helping activate them to be part of the solution, as opposed to just waiting around for the healthcare system to find them and have that magic pill to help make a difference. So I think we need to empower people to be part of the solution.
Thank you, Emily. And I see that Misty is now connected via phone. And so what we'd like to do is, Misty, we are on the question that I just popped into the chat. In what ways do you see healthcare and wellness as an industry contributing to a more vibrant Hawaii? And if you'd like to redo your opening statement, because we didn't catch any of that, and as you finish your opening statement, just segue into any additional responses you'd like to add to the first question, and then we'll go from there. Thanks. Let's try this again.
Can you hear me? Everyone
Yes.
can hear me?
Perfect.
Oh, awesome. I'm so sorry, everyone. Thank you so much. And so good to be here. And in answering this question, I can just kind of segue into my intro. The lens I am bringing to this, and that in which I would answer this question, is from the public health lens. And that's not only because of my educational background in public health, that's really because of my personal and work experiences. Like in the beginning, I was a public health Peace Corps volunteer in Kenya, and that really ignited my passion for public health and informed me about what public health is, which I know now we really focus on population and prevention. So that is the lens I come with. And when I was working in Kenya, really trying to address some serious health issues, really trying to implement some important health programs, we had to do that with no resources, close to no resources. But we also learned that I had to work together with everyone. Partnership and collaboration was key. So as we move forward here and we think about how we are going to, move forward for our economy, how health and wellness can be incorporated into that, I take those two lessons with me in all I do, and even in this conversation. So collaboration and partnership, and then that focus on prevention. So the newest endeavor in my life right now is my Ka'i Health Corporation, and it's really a health organization that does focus, it's through that lens. It's looking at our population, what are our health issues as a community, and then looking to see our workforce. Like Danny mentioned, we have a major shortage with multiple clinical workforce issues, public health professionals. And so how do we educate, grow them here, keep them here, and then finally, with that strong foundation of public health prevention. Without prevention, we're not going to be successful in the long term. We won't be sustainable. So going forward with building a more vibrant Hawaii, definitely with that public health lens, again, focusing on population, our population, what are our issues here, and then of course, prevention. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Misty. So we started the conversation with what does a vibrant Hawaii look like with healthcare and wellness as a thriving industry as part of that. So what we want to segue with the next question, let's talk a little bit about what are the vulnerabilities and challenges that exist within your work and what can be done to strengthen that.
Take turns. My turn then. Okay. So when we look at healthcare, I look at it as a continuum, right? So you get the hospital, okay, then you get, urgent cares, then you get the independent physicians, then you get the health centers, and then you get, and then you can jump into, mental health, those enabling services, the social services, tobacco cessation, substance abuse. So, so when we look at health on Hawaii Island, we got to look at it, in a much larger context. So at Bay Clinic, I'm not concerned about only my mission. I feel like my mission should help whatever the hospital's mission, and it should help, the urgent cares mission and other community health centers, because it's only together that I think, we can kind of arrive at the next place for Hawaii Island. There's a quote that Martin Luther King, he said that we cannot be, a first class state or island with people who feel second class. So if we get people that we're treating like second class citizens because we're not allowing them access to care like everybody else, then we will never be a vibrant Hawaii. We're only as vibrant as our disadvantaged, you know, and so this idea of bringing everybody up, not just economically, but health-wise is super important to me. And I think super important for Bay Clinic. So I offer that to the next speaker.
I could just add that, you know, some of the vulnerabilities or challenges that have existed in our program and what we do is access right now, access to those who need the assistance. How do we reach them? How do we let them know that we're here and that, that we have programs in place to assist them? So I think COVID has also added a heightened level of anxiety for those who already may challenge with reaching out and getting the services and healthcare that they need. And this has just really elevated that. So that's something that we've been challenged with. Another one is our basic infrastructure. I mean, we're all complaining about our internet struggles and speeds working from home while our kids are also on Zoom classes, and we're trying to kind of hold all the balls in the air with these little devices that we're now clinging to. And access is not equitable across the island. And so how do we even level that up so that our basic communication is met? So those have been challenges that we've been trying to work through.
I think for me, some of the vulnerabilities and challenges that exist within the particular HANA that I do is that trauma-informed care is kind of been soup du jour, you know, but lately, like everybody's talking about it. However, in many ways, it's still emerging, and in some ways, and this isn't criticism, so I hope nobody takes this as criticism, but when we have different silos in approaches to community through public entities, so health, human services, education, public safety, and all of those things, there's different funding streams that has different interventions, that has different terminology, that has it contained within one system. So that siloed approach tends to actually be more trauma-inducing. And if there was more of, so in other words, we're sort of vulnerable if we're looking only at children or the elderly or incarcerated or people coming out of prison with just one lens and one department. In theory, when a home visit happens, it should both come out of the health and human services possibility, right? And wellness building and everything like that. So I think siloed approaches tend to challenge the work that I'm trying to do and trying to lift up. I think the way we can strengthen this is through, you know, the university's approach in working with interdepartments is to take that as a micro view to you know, spread it out more worldly. So if a early childhood educator could also get coursework in public health, in public safety, if psychology majors can also get the part of social work and human services and all that, and having more interdisciplinary approaches, when people come out of university, they'll have more of that approach to want to work together more often. So I think what Farah and them are doing is taking the steps in those directions, and that's the hope I have in this. Mahalo.
And just really to build what the other panelists said, I completely agree. You know, working in silos is not the way we're going to get things done. I think some of the challenges that we're experiencing right now during a pandemic, and what's taught us, hopefully we remember this, is, you know, we really need to take that approach. Educating people, I think that's the hard part. What is public health? And we are all individuals. And a lot of times we work in silos because we're thinking just about our organization or just about our, you know, our specific service, you know, whoever we service. And we can't no longer do that, you know. And I think that comes with educating people about what public health is and putting on that lens of population and how that's very different from looking at things from an individual lens. And I don't know if we have any physicians on here. I mean, I love physicians, but that's like a great example I use. You know, you go to school, you're educated to look at your one patient, diagnose and treat your one patient. Even for us, as me as a parent, I'm looking at my child, my family. But we have to look at it from our entire county, our entire island, you know, and the decisions we make, the approaches we take to address the economy and some health issues is going to be completely different with that population lens. So I think educating the public about that and making that very clear will help us to be successful going forward.
Awesome. Thank you for your responses about vulnerabilities and challenges, because once we're able to identify what those are, that gives us some footing on which to step into and onto for the next steps forward. And one of the things I did not mention in my introduction about the SEDS document is this really is a requirement of the Economic Development Administration, the EDA, federal level. And in order for us to be eligible to bring in federal dollars, this is a guiding document. And so some of the goals and strategies that we list on this document are important, because that is what helps to position us to be able to move forward on some of these initiatives. So what we're going to talk about next is the flip side of those vulnerabilities and those challenges. What opportunities exist for more community members? And these community members are everyone from keiki to kupuna, individuals, organizations. And when we're talking organizations, we're also talking about educators. Okay, so what opportunities exist for more community members to be involved in healthcare and wellness related work and experiences? And I think this is a nice segue off of some of the, we cannot continue to work in silos anymore. So what are those opportunities that we look forward to?
You know, I would say that the Blue Zones project has been a great example for us of not only highlighting some challenges that we have in our community, but also ways that every single person can get involved to be part of the greater picture for the community, so they can find their niche of where they fit in. So I think by utilizing programs like theirs and others that have models that are already working, then we don't have to reinvent the wheel with some of this to get people involved. I think we need to empower people to be part of the solution for our community at their individual level, at the family level, and then how they can contribute to the community as a whole. So I think programs like Blue Zone are a great start.
That's true. Yeah, and you know, Big Island, we have a lot of those, what they call gatherings, you know, the Heart Walk, Alzheimer's Walk. Blue Zones is definitely a great initiative for us on Hawaii Island. Almost like these excuses to get together, you know, to get together with one focus, with one mission. And, you know, we've been trying to, it's not like, you know, Vibrant Hawaii is, you know, is something that is, you know, only now we're trying to, you know, forever. Just like from my upbringing here, we've always looked at programs and opportunities to increase the vibrancy of Hawaii Island. So and you know, we have it. I mean, this is the most beautiful island I think in the world. I mean, we got all the different geographies. You know, average 80 degrees temperature all year round. Almost like no excuse not to be healthy. But we still, you know, we get those challenges. So. But the strength is, I mean, yeah, we work in silos too, but we also collaborate. I see many of us working across the table, extending our hands in partnership. And so I think we just gotta continue to build on that. And I think Vibrant Hawaii is an excellent initiative to bring us together as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with what was said. I think Vibrant Hawaii is also at that place this critical hub as well to get this type of information out, to create the opportunities. I know personally, for me speaking, working with Vibrant Hawaii, it's allowed us to expand trauma-informed care training to many communities, and train out different communities, community of practice folks in trauma-informed care work. I think COVID-19 has shed light on the need for wellness and resilience building through trauma-informed strategies. So I think those opportunities definitely exist. It's a little late now, but I was talking to the Department of Human Services at one point. When FDR approached the Great Depression, and we had so many people out of work during COVID, what he actually did was pay people to do things, like the Civilian Conservation Corps and things like that. One of my ideas was, like, could we pay people who were unemployed or laid off and pay them to go through trauma-informed care training? Because, like, for example, if I'm a bartender and I go through trauma-informed care training and I understand more of how people work and how mental health services are needed, bartenders would be really good frontline folks, to be honest with you, on identifying the need for mental health service and the ability then to refer out. So using really this time of the pandemic where people may be idle and not working to provide professional development services and training and establish networking, so that when we get out of this and we will jump right into a recession and more mental health service needs, at least there would be opportunities of a more informed public.
And here at UHH, we really try to do that, to really involve the community in health and wellness and the things that we do here. I'll give you an example. We have a community engagement center here at UH Hilo. And what that center tries to do is they try and seek out faculty members that teach courses that the subject matter or the deliverables align with community needs. And so for the first time last year, my class was part of a community engage course for that semester, and I partnered with the Hawaii Public Health Institute focusing on the vaping awareness campaign. And so my students were able to go out into the community, work with a nonprofit organization. Their work assignments were deliverables that the institution utilized for their campaign. They went to high schools and talked to high school students right across the street at Waikea High. So we were right there. We were able to connect with students at the high school, with the community, with the organization, other organizations within the community. And it was such a learning experience for everyone and a positive experience for everyone. So I want to definitely continue to do things like that. To give people that kind of opportunities to work and to get to learn about health. And also, in my class, I've tried to invite different community members, organizations in, such as the Department of Health, and talk to my students about MRC, the Medical Reserve Corps. That is a great way for the community to get involved, especially if they're out of work or retired, utilizing their skill set and their experiences and their education to be on hand. So in a public health epidemic like this, when we're needing people on hand to get to work, they're already registered, they're trained, and they're ready to go. So that would be another great way to get everyone involved.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to piggyback on what Misty is sharing. It's so true. I was invited a couple of years ago to go to Waikea High School to talk to potential future nurses, people in the health field. So there's kind of this career pathways, right? So if our private schools, if they can really get into that, get our kids excited about health, get our kids excited about healthcare. Because when I was working at the Office of Aging, I got to tell you, it's the kids nowadays different. Not different, but the thing is they don't like get into the healthcare field. We have difficulty finding kids who are willing to go take care of kupuna. So if we can build on that career pathway, within that, because a lot of kids they're so instant gratification. Many of them don't like go to college. So if we can give them a skill set, almost like a certification after high school, maybe an EMT certification right after high school, maybe a caregiver certification or nursing assistant or something that they can utilize, because, thank goodness for our community colleges, because, that's a 2-year degree. It's very open to diversity. It's also inexpensive. So we really got to support our community colleges. But we got some good things going, I think, in the educational system with the career pathways, maybe build upon that, ensure that our community college systems get proper funding. And I think those are some of the strengths that we can build upon, for sure.
And with that response, that is a nice segue to another one of our questions that we had. As I mentioned at the beginning, our education stream, one of the substreams there is workforce development. So I'm gonna skip a question and go to, is there a specific component of education and workforce development that needs to be strengthened in order to expand the economic sector of healthcare and wellness? So Kimo, you already kind of started on that route. And any other ideas focusing on educational and workforce development components that other panelists might have as well?
Well, I think, so if it's specific, I think I'm working with the Department of Education and the Act 271 Task Force that's to provide trauma-informed care services to the DOE. And we're actually going to have, I think our first project location is in Aloha Elementary and Ka'u. But I think that's almost a little too late. I think if teachers were to be taught wellness and resilience, trauma-informed care training, and the need for healthy attachments, as well as simple research about, the benevolent childhood experiences, as well as the protective factors, those type of things that are put in place, it'll better prepare them for the classroom than just teaching pedagogy, than just teaching content area for your core subject matters, but really understanding whole child. I mean, I went through the UH system as an educator, and you learn all of the things you need to learn. It's just like if you go to law school, right? You don't necessarily practice law until you observe your first courtroom case. It's basically theory. So I think if we were able to have had that practical piece within the College of Education, that would help and better equip teachers coming out, getting ready for their first classroom experience. And not traumatize both the teacher and the students, because stressed students cannot learn and stressed teachers cannot teach.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we look at what is the fastest growing industry in the country, it is healthcare, 15% growth in the next 10 years. And, here in Hawaii, and especially on our island, I think we have a physician shortage that was mentioned before, so focusing on that as well. But the major issue, healthcare issue, yes, we're dealing with a pandemic, but the major health issue is chronic disease. And with chronic disease, how do we address that? That is preventable. We can focus definitely on nutrition and physical activity. So really, the workforce to do that work is important. And if we're talking about our county specifically, I mean, Kimo mentioned earlier, our weather, we're 10 of the 14 climate zones here on the island. So when we talk about physical activity, we are primed to be able to set up programs, implement programs to get people moving. In our community, Hilo Bayfront Trails, I mean, that was a step in that direction towards a built environment to create a space for people to be physically active. We have, Emily, with farming, I mean, definitely nutrition. We have awesome local farms here. I know Kea's on Vibrant Hawaii. I've been purchasing her eco boxes of supporting local farmers here on the island. And, nutrition, I mean, really supporting that as a community, as a whole community, government supporting that, and really, again, collaboration, having health centers partner with farms, making sure our projects, our research, really builds upon that and utilizes our assets. And I think if we focus on that, that will make our entire community healthier, because again, 6 out of 10 Americans suffer from a chronic disease. The last chronic disease report, I think the Department of Health did a decade ago or so, over 80% of adults here in our state suffer from chronic disease. So if we can focus on physical activity and nutrition, which again, we are primed to do here on this island, it's gonna benefit all.
So one of the important pieces that's missing from today's panel discussion, and it's because we don't have actual physicians on the call, is a little bit of what we have heard in previous years about shortages, right, of doctors, even at the nursing level. So I just want to make sure that we do put that out there for the record, that today's discussion is important. And while we're not necessarily talking about all of the components of health, it is a big umbrella. We also want to acknowledge that our island, our county for many years has been dealing with this issue of shortages of medical care professionals, and having it part of our recording will allow us to then look at some of those solutions as well.
You know what's interesting? Carl, real quick, let me just say, you know what's interesting is, you know, we're continuously hiring at Bay Clinic. So I've been finding it's not that we have a shortage of physicians, we have a shortage of good physicians. Because we get plenty of resumes, but you know, lack of experience, lack of cultural understanding, you know, there's a lot of deficits, I think, in some of our applicants. So it's not like we don't have resumes, you know, for nurses and physicians. Well, what we lack is good physicians who not just coming to Hawaii for a vacation. You know, so very transient kind of physicians we get. Our dental side solid, you know, plenty of dentists, local people, they like be dentists. At behavioral health side, we could use more mental health, you know, licensed professionals for sure. Physicians, yeah, we can grow our own and everything. But you know, I think we got a partner. You know, we get the residency program right now at the hospital. You know, if we can have more of those programs connected to the university, I think that's going to help with this so-called shortage.
Mm-hmm. And good point. So when we recognize that there is, and I'm not going to use the word abundance, an abundance of resumes, but when we have resumes, but not all of them are falling into the category of qualified for what the various organizations are looking for. I think that is the next question that we're asking, right? Is what is missing, and are there ways that we can supplement that to add to the workforce in a meaningful way? Because it might be a waste to have some of these professionals that aren't being fully utilized. And if there is a way to help elevate and uplift, is that a possibility, or are we having to look at a completely different framework for addressing the quote unquote shortage there? Mm-hmm. And I think there are many perspectives that add to that. So just throwing that out for the discussion as well.
Yeah.
Okay, and for those of you who are interested, Danny has popped in a link to a video for those of you who may want to watch that when we're done. Short video, but very, very informative of some of the work that Danny has been talking about. Misty, were you going to chime in here?
No, I was just going to kind of go off of exactly what you said. How can we support these physicians? Given that chronic disease is the predominant issue of our time, healthcare issue of our time, especially our KES program, you know, our graduates, they're not going to be physicians perhaps, but definitely utilizing them as trainers or educators to focus on physical activity and exercise. You know, there's definitely conversation nationally that, you know, perhaps physicians need to have more education on nutrition, more education specific experience on exercise physiology, because again, these are going to be our go-to strategies to address chronic disease. But there are different types of areas of the workforce that we can focus on, concentrate on to supplement this and to assist with physicians. Kimo and I actually taught a community health worker certificate program at HCC. You know, these people, our students didn't have, you know, those degrees, but they came in knowing the community, having that native intelligence and the resources and connections to have people trust them, to have patients trust them and engage in different programs, talk about what they're eating, what they're doing with their families, working out. So we really need to capitalize on workforce in that sector for sure.
Yeah, just piggyback on Misty real fast. So, you know, the definition of physician, right? So who is the doctor, right? Who is the kauka? Is it the licensed professional, or is it the kupuna? You know, is it the Uncle Howard Pe'a who does ho'oponopono, or la'au lapa'au? You know, well, how come that's not considered physician? You know, so the idea of expanding the notion of who is the healer, right? Because when we do our assessments, you know, we ask, hey, so how do you think you got what you got? You know, whether it's depression or diabetes, or then we try to, and then so what kind of treatment you think would work for that? You know, and then because we're trying to get their world view, right? And then who's the healer you think will help you forget to be more healthy? You'd be surprised. 50% no say my doctor. Okay, they say my priest. They say maybe church. They say uncle, auntie on the street. My nurse. You know, so that maybe the idea of professional shortage, or maybe the idea of physician, we got to kind of expand. Yeah, just someone now.
Absolutely, and I know in some structures as well, we've talked about the preparer of meals in the home, right? And so when we have those that are going to classes to learn, it's really about who's the primary preparer of meals in the home, and how can we infuse a household in that way, because changes at that level can have effect longer term. So Kimo and Misty both touched on the unique characteristics of Hawaii, and I want to go to this question, also being mindful of the time, because we're going to shift to participant questions in a little bit here. How do we leverage the unique characteristics of Hawaii Island to support expansion of local healthcare and wellness industry? So we've mentioned it, but really, how do we leverage that? How do we bring this into programs and services?
The fact that my program is actually focused on veterans in agriculture and production agriculture, growing the next generation of farmers. But we understand that health and wellness is an important key role to all of it, that concept into a program that would otherwise not have those goals or those additional topics that we bring up. And I think that might help in systematically making a change if we know in the education system that health computer class, we're also going to learn how to do some stretching and moving around, so that we're not sitting in desks all day, and incorporating that kind of process and thinking into the day in and day out conversations, education platforms that we already have, incorporating the wellness piece into the structure that's already existing. So that would be.
For sure. Let me add to Emily real quick. So this Saturday I went to Richardson's, finally got out of the house, took the kids swimming, Keokaha, and I met up with Kalani Kaho'olaumi, who runs that program down there. And so we started talking stories, and when you ask the question, how can we leverage the unique characteristics of Hawaii Island, right? So what is more unique? It's our ocean, it's our mountain. I mean, like Misty said, we get we get so much outside to help us leverage. And so, his idea of basically taking the kids out, teaching them how to navigate, get them in the water. He does pods of 10, under 10, just because of COVID. But going back to this idea of leveraging what we already have, Hawaii Island is beautiful. I think we're underutilizing our environment, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely leveraging our environment, but leveraging just who we are. Our entire state, especially our island, very diverse, right? Hilo voted every year for the most diverse four-year institution in the nation. Even with COVID right now, diversity is super important. When we're talking about clinical trials, that's been the problem, that there's not enough diversity in the clinical trials, participants in clinical trials. And I think we can really leverage that to not get funding to trial a lot of different interventions for health, business models, different strategies going forward. But I think that's something definitely that is unique to us and can be really valuable.
Yeah.
I think one of the greatest resources are people. You know, Dr. Alameda mentioned Kalani Kaleoumi, and I love that brother. But yeah, and we also have, like Auntie Jessie and Pahala, David Fuertes and Kohala. And so we have what's really amazing about the Hawaii Island communities are these gatekeepers that really makavalu the communities. So how do we work with gatekeepers to constantly hear what their needs are and what the needs of the community are, and then be knowing and understanding that they have the pulse of the community as well as the trust of the community, and use them sort of as the ambassadors, so that when we identify some of these critical mass and some of these critical needs, it's truly coming from community-based input, and that the solutions are kind of co-created. I think there would be greater chances in sustainability, and that's to me the crown jewel of working and being part of Hawaii Island is the resource of people. Kind of along those lines, and a little bit with the last question too, I think if we can identify if we need, like Mr. was talking about the healthcare field as a growing opportunity, and Dr. Alameda about finding the right people. I think, Kamehameha Schools is on the call. If we can identify these different places where Lahui is kind of struggling in, but yet we know there's economic opportunities to enter these fields, then we should start maybe working backwards design and scholarshiping from middle school to high school to understand that if you want to go in ophthalmology, or if you want to go in sports medicine, if you want to go into community healthcare, these are the programs that you could take at UH Hilo. You can actually stay in community, you're going to get your education paid for, and best of all, you get to work in the community you grew up in. And I think that's what everybody would want, and that's what we would want too, right? We would want our children to stay home. We don't want the brain drain to occur. So I think working with those community ambassadors to identify the keiki and haumana that could be identified for these different fields that we need to, and then we can really dedicate and scholarship and mentorships towards these opio to homegrown and keep our talent inside.
Yeah, for sure. I guess add to that too. So yeah, so leveraging our environment. And I still looking at the chat over here, and I was thinking, Shelly Ogata mentioned about Malama Ola, Nauvi, diabetes program. So what about leveraging programs that used to work that somehow, I don't know, disappear? So what about going back and, I remember growing up, we had the Shintani, the Waianae diet. And that was something that my parents was all into, and it won't work. It was basically fish and poi. Or, when I was in adult mental health division, we had the ACT program, Assertive Community Treatment Program for the severely mentally ill. All of a sudden that one disappeared. Nursing Without Walls, that was a great program. I mean, so maybe we also got to leverage those programs in the past that for some reason, we no stay. And how come no stay? Was it funding? Because, prevention costs, they said an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure. So it's, we got to go back to those programs that for some reason doesn't exist, but it worked. So I think we should leverage that too.
Yes, and that is exactly what leads us to another very important question. So we talk about these changes in times. We talk about these changes in funding. Sometimes funding is guided by larger initiatives, priorities, by whomever is a decision maker, whether that's a private organization, whether that's federal, state, administrative changes, right? So let's talk a little bit. How can the industry better navigate changes in the healthcare and wellness industry? So we talked a little bit about Blue Zones was also another great example that was mentioned earlier. Blue Zones came in, we had Susie talking about how Kuaokala got certified, Charlene chiming in on how Hawaii County, the first county that actually had all three regions certified. And then all of a sudden that initiative stops, and where exactly is Blue Zones right now? So let's talk a little bit about how do we better navigate changes in healthcare and wellness industry really for sustainability?
So there's a golden rule, there's another golden rule, and that is he who has the gold make the rules. if we need to elect officials who buy into health as a top priority, and it goes back to who every vote counts, because it's very difficult to move the health industry and to expand in healthcare if our public officials don't have that mindset. If those who make the decisions have other ideas in mind. So I think it also starts there. Leadership at the top is super important.
I think it would also be really helpful to employ people to help make choices for themselves. Like that was the messaging that Blue Zones was so strong about, was showing and highlighting the different ways that people could get involved and also take responsibility for their own health and well-being. I think our Kuleana is a great example recently of ways of something that employed people to wear their mask, to do it for our kapuna, to do it for our neighbors. And that helped tie in a message that was consistent and that was empowered people to know what to do to take a step in the right next direction. And so it would be great for, if it's not Blue Zones, maybe it's Vibrant Hawaii or whoever, to have a message that's collective and collaborative that can help give people a few key things that they could be doing on their own to elevate our community health and wellness as well.
And I think to navigate the changes, we need to be aware of what the changes are. What do we have to navigate? And I think that's been very obvious again during this pandemic. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have a clearinghouse of sorts for public health, population-based health data in place to generate and collect information, analyze it, and then distribute it and have it available for everyone to collect and see what's going on and to then adjust, right? So I think, there's a lot of talk here in the chat about, again, learning from the past for sure. And I think the problems about what happened to these programs is because we haven't collected that data. We don't know. We can't prove that it worked. We have anecdotal information that it worked. So we need to start doing that. And it takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of time, but it's shown, it's been proven. We need to invest in that. We need to invest in that type of infrastructure, whether it be a clearinghouse or another way to make sure that we're collecting that important information, making choices based off of the evidence and data and science, and then going forward, keeping things that have been proven to work.
I hope I'm answering the question, but I think for me, like when an individual suffers some type of trauma, then it leads to, the inability for metacognition or for this thought process. It affects stress, health, everything like that. And running out to this parallel process with institutional trauma, I think we can see where something can happen that causes everybody within the organization to be traumatized. Therefore, the organization doesn't necessarily move in its traumatized organization. I think sometimes the things that are coming at the health and wellness industry from all sides, whether it's dealing with the pandemic or federal changes or different health guidelines changes, what has happened is it's just trickled down impact and affecting really the workforce. So having more things like reflective supervision and reflective practice in places that allows the industry to take the time to heal and self-care and wellness is a way to take care of the group internally. And that if these great organizations can understand that there is such a thing as institutional trauma, how do we then take the steps to mitigate that? And then how do we sort of work with other agencies to coordinate services? We talked a lot about that today too, but in those coordination of services, not only will it break silos, but it can also help each other navigate those changes as well and have less trauma within internal organizations.
Thanks, Danny. All of the speakers have kind of mentioned COVID, and so I wanted to spend a little bit of time asking panelists to reflect on how COVID has impacted your work. It's been a very traumatic experience for our community locally and globally, and it's had a traumatic impact on our economy. And so how has COVID impacted your work? And what are some ways that you personally have pivoted to be more resilient in these times? And do you have any advice for folks listening in or for industry to be more resilient through this pandemic?
I can go. So Bay Clinic. So we get reimbursed by the visit. So if our clients our patients don't visit us, we don't get reimbursed. So the first thing we learn right off the bat is that we shouldn't be like we should work with our payers, HMSA, United, Aloha Care, and develop a payment model that is based on value and not visits. Because what has happened is we had like a control group, kind of like, because the independent physicians, they got into this payment transformation program that the payers pay them per member per month, regardless of how much services you provide. You basically keep your patients healthy and you get that payment, right? So during the pandemic, they were sustained. They wasn't stressing. Bay Clinic, we were stressing because our revenues would just drop like significantly. We had to go on furloughs, we had to lay off. So it was an anxious period for us. Still it is now, but there's some government support. So the COVID pandemic had kind of woken us up a little bit, and we got to figure out how to move away from this fee-for-service model, which to a more value-based model. And so that's what we're doing now with the various payers. COVID has allowed us to do that. And also COVID just basically accelerated everything we had on our plans. Like telehealth, we was thinking about next year for that, but that is now. So, transportation, there's 40,000 of our island residents are now on MedQuest because of the loss of jobs. So so the poor and the near poor have just expanded, 2-3-fold. So it's caused us to kind of relook at how we provide services, how we get reimbursed for services, and that might be the future of healthcare. So COVID had caused us to pivot and to maybe, look at how the future will be different. So of course, it's a tragedy, but it's also allowed us some great insights too. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think COVID has just really magnified what was already an issue, but has provided the opportunity to address some of those things like distance learning, rural and remote access, digital divide, access to affordable healthcare, all of those things, right? So in a sense, it's provided that opportunity. For me personally, when I was sharing about trauma-informed care, but then now COVID hit, and then there's really the understanding that, okay, how do we build up wellness and resilience? So I think it has magnified the need, therefore accelerated the work, which brings us back to workforce development and needing to really, and that's what I love about the working with Vibrant Hawaii, is because through the CARES Act, we're able to build up a community of trainers on Hawaii Island, dedicated for Hawaii Island. I'm an Oahu guy. Hawaii Island folks should be training Hawaii Island folks to me. So it's really brought to the forefront. I didn't introduce personally, but I wrote a reso for Ways and Means and Finance, and it was co-introduced to make Hawaii a trauma-informed state. Talk to Ashley about this too as a county charter. But if you put that into eventually statute, everyone who accesses health human service monies through contracts would have to incorporate trauma-informed care practices and policies to fully execute their contract, which would then ensure that the clients they serve would be done so in a way that trauma is being understood, stress is being understood, and that actions that won't trigger or re-traumatize people would be put in place. So I think COVID has provided an opportunity to just elevate the conversation that we've been trying to get prior to COVID. Yeah.
Emily and Misty, did you want to weigh in on this one? How COVID has impacted, Emily, your farm, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Kimo and Danny and how it stopped us in our tracks. It made us look at what we really needed to do for the right now, but it actually has helped us be more resilient for our program long term as well. We are in a rural community in an environment where we need to utilize technology in order to make sure that everyone is on the same playing field with the information that they have. So we were able to pivot our program to smaller groups of on-site farm work, but then all of our classwork and even our farm tours that we do with local farmers on island were all done virtually. We also recorded those events and those services and those classroom experiences so that more people can learn and gain from that instead of just the few that went through the program at this time around. So I think long-term, it's helped us be more resilient, but it was definitely some sleepless nights as we were looking to enhance our program and make sure we could survive. I also think on a personal level, just slowing down, taking gratitude walks each day, being aware of our beautiful island and how we don't need to be fearful to go outside and breathe the fresh air, connect with our loved ones, and making sure that that's part of every day so that we can show up for our programs, show up for our clientele or whoever that is, and be prepared for the next day. So that's something personally that we've done.
Yeah, so in the middle of spring semester, COVID hit and everything in class learning when I was teaching, everything had to go online. So I think the panel members have done a good job, talking about the infrastructure, especially, the digital divide that exists, and that became apparent. I think it forced my class, my students, I think it was mentioned in the beginning, also, we're in this very instant gratification type of a world now, especially my students, and this forced them to really be patient and slow down and understand that, with the pandemic, things are changing every day. It's a novel virus. We don't know anything. So we need to be patient about that and learn to adjust. And I think that's been good for some of them to understand that, okay, I need to stay alert, make the changes necessary, be flexible, and be patient. It's also for us here at the university to respond to this and to make sure we keep our students, faculty, and staff safe. We have to work together. And so departments, faculty members that never talked to each other before came together on a task force and really tried to figure out what are we going to do going forward. So again, that goes for, I think, our entire community. It's forced certain silos to be broken down, have to work together, and to continue to do that will strengthen us as a community. We've now been introduced to that. We've been kind of, for some, forced to work with others. We know what it's like. We can do it. That's been shown, and we need to continue to do that.
I think you all are incredible examples of how to be resilient and pivot and just not waste a good pandemic or crisis. So thank you. I have a couple of government related questions. It's astounding to me that when we have money on the table, how quick government is to act. I mean, our county has been able to, I think, spend down $80 million within less than 6 months, which is phenomenal. And also meeting all the various, federal requirements with reporting and whatnot. And so my question is, we are on the cusp, the eve of the start of a new legislature, the kickoff of the biennium. And because, the state is going to be in arrears with its budget, our county not being in a position to ask for any money for capital improvement projects because a lot of cuts need to be made. However, there is opportunity to potentially change statute, words on paper. What are some statutes that you're thinking should be revised in order to better support your work and the overall healthcare and wellness industry? Does anything come to mind from prior legislative sessions? Danny alluded to this earlier. Sometimes things just don't pass because leadership says no. I think we are at a point in our community where there is an uprising of community that isn't going to stand for politics as usual and status quo anymore. They're going to demand some real meaningful change. And so with the community on our side, what are some changes to statute or policies or processes that we should be advocating for?
Misty mentioned, we taught at the community college, the community health worker. So, the reason why we don't use them as much as we should is because the state has not acknowledged them as a reimbursable service. Like they would, I don't know, nurse practitioner, So if we could, revisit that statute and get our community health workers to be on a level playing field with MedQuest. So this is a kind of a Judy Moore Peterson type of a question. You know, would she allow community health workers, those who, you know, boots on the ground, going into our communities, and this can be the aunties, the uncles, could be somebody right out of high school who knows the community well, could be our community brokers, like Danny suggested. Making like formalizing it legislatively, but keeping it informal, because the informal look of it is what makes it work. But formalizing it legislatively so that we could get reimbursements for that. That'll be a start.
I remember I was a student when the Affordable Care Act was being discussed. I was a student at Manoa, and it's in danger right now of being overturned nationally. And even if it is, here locally, I think Medicaid, Quest, it has to remain at current levels. And if we have at all the opportunity to vote and to make sure that, you know, whoever is elected focuses on keeping the Affordable Care Act and some of its action items in place, that's so important, not just for our county and our state, but our country. People, how do we get access? We need health insurance. That's just how our country works. So definitely, rightfully so, insurance is going to be a huge issue here going forward. We have to focus on that because access needs to be there for everybody and our most vulnerable populations, for sure. And in the Affordable Care Act, there's a lot of public health infrastructure type funding and action items as well to make sure that the public health workforce, primary care physicians somehow get subsidized, and we focus on policies like that. So I think for healthcare, that's going to be huge in the next coming weeks and going forward. And again, at the state level, we really need to make sure our state level Medicaid, which is MedQuest, system at least stays at the level that it is.
I typed it I put it in the chat box, but the CONAM that was put into place where public funding couldn't be used for public pre-K, so to speak. It was that whole thing. And what that did was it shut down a lot of mom and pop preschools at that point. Already, like, 85% of the brain is developed in the first 1,000 days of life. And social emotional learning in the age 4. We are looking at children entering our K-12 system ill-equipped because they don't have access to preschools. Right now in East Hawaii, there's 74 3-year-olds that are competing for one license seat. That's tough. And the DOE guidelines makes it, or the state guidelines makes it very difficult for early learning populations to be both publicly supported and to pop up and populate. There used to be a Healthy Start before, and really trying to take care of moms when baby is in womb as well. So the different prenatal care services that could take place, home visiting, things through the Department of Health and Human Services as well. All of those fundings are in threat of being cut. So I think if we want to, Dr. David DeRock from Kukuakali Valley shared with me once, if you get the very beginning of life right and the very end of life right, everything else in the middle works out. And that's his job as a public health person. So I think, how do we emphasize more on the beginning of life so that our kids are prepared and equipped for success in school?
And I'm looking at Emily, and I'm thinking about the Kupuna Care caucus, that they have at the legislature, the caregiver initiative that allowed caregivers to go to work, so that they can stimulate the economy. But a lot of our caregivers, Emily and myself, when I took care of my mom, my sisters, like, we had to take off of work, so that affects our jobs, possibly our employment. So if the legislators can pay attention to the caregiver and allow that respite, if you will, so that our kupuna can be cared for, that's going to help the economy big time. Also alleviate the toxic stress that many caregivers feel while caring for their loved one, which also translates to bad health. So that's key. Danny mentioned the earlier triggered a thought about our kupuna And so we got to make sure that the funding that we get for our kupuna stays. When I worked with the Office of Aging as the executive, we got the Older Americans Act. So I was telling Kai, hey, if you get into Congress, make sure that Older Americans Act, nobody messes with that funding, because that funding comes down to the ledge, and then the ledge disperses out to the counties. And Big Island, we get our share, and that helps us provide in-home care for our kupuna. It helps us to support the Hayat program, that day program that just opened a couple of days ago, reopened, which is another respite for our caregivers. So those legislative statutes you talked about what got to change. Missy talking about what got to stay in place. And I like that. There's some really good legislation that got to stay in place, because if not, we're going to be in trouble.
And did you want to weigh in at all in this question? Okay. My final question, just kind of reflecting on everything that the panelists have shared so far, is health and wellness is really a lifestyle. When our people are healthy and well, that contributes to a healthy and thriving economy. And so with that in mind, what are some key things that you think your county government can do to better support you and this industry? Some things that come to mind, Danny, by the county adopting a resolution or formalizing in its code that employees need to approach their work with trauma-informed care, that would make a more informed and caring government in working in partnership with community. When I think about Emily and what she's doing with her farm, are there opportunities for us to look at our permitting system and be more efficient so that we can encourage more retreat centers and farm operations such as yours? When I think about Misty and everything that she's trying to do with building that workforce development, and I saw in the chat some things that have to do with public health and our and open spaces. Is this a place for us to take a hard look at our update to the general plan and ensuring that we're infusing this concept of having healthy people, having people that are well, as a lens that we adopt in revising our general plan? So just some thoughts on how county government can help you and the industry. Kimo, I didn't unintentionally leave you out. Maybe like us bring back the healthcare task force that Billy created. That was a good thing.
Yeah, that was a good thing. A lot of the chats talk about the blue zones, and it's still around. Ironically, we're the healthiest state in the United States, right? But that's because, again, going back to my health equity, right, lens, it's like, so older Japanese women have brought the health statistic all the way up to make us the most healthy state in the United States. But if you take out older Asian women, and then you look at Native Hawaiians, and you look at, so there's some health disparities for sure. But yet, there's no reason why we cannot be healthy if you just look at our geography. But there is that access to health that concerns me, and I think the county gotta weigh that lens going into this next planning period. It's like the health choices that we make really depends on the health choices that we have, and not every community get the same health choices. So if you live in a rural area, like I live Hilo, can go Spencer's, Penn's, go work out. I get supermarkets, can go buy good healthy food, farmers markets. But if you live in an area that don't have those health choices, then again goes back to the zip code being a better predictor than your genetic code. So if the county can have that lens and looking at health through that public health perspective, I think it'll be a good place to go, just like that.
I think, Ashley, like you said, going back to some of the things that were done, like really, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, and then I'll go. Go ahead.
And even like some of the things that were done before, Reed's Bay, like making that a place, that's what he did before, making that a place that runners can walk, get water fountain right there to really encourage that. I mentioned Bayfront Trails earlier, utilizing that space at Bayfront to create concrete walking trails. In public health, we refer to that as the built environment. And I think we have a lot of space here. We need to really focus on that, giving people access, making it easy for our community to be physically active. No one's going to want to ride the bike. I tell my students all the time, like, yeah, I would be scared to ride bike here to school as well. There's no real good bike lanes. Now we've done better. We've actually, we have some really great bike lanes and walkways around campus right now, but that's not the same for other parts of our community and other parts of our island. So really focusing on that built environment, making sure we have improved roads and bike lanes, large sidewalks to encourage exercise, to encourage walking. On a Keohokalole Highway, I mean, out in Kona, that you see people walking there all the time now. That wasn't there before. So really focusing on the built environment at the county level, that's going to be really important to get our community healthy. And you mentioned farming, for sure, subsidies for farmers, you know, expansion of farmers markets so people can eat healthier. You know, that was a huge thing, SNAP benefits being used at farmers markets. So looking at those types of strategies to encourage people to eat healthy and to get moving.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Misty is sharing. And I also feel that the county code holds us back from being able to have retreats, to have people stay at the farm for short periods of time in order to gain the knowledge that they need to take that back to their place. They also leasing lands and not being able to live on that land. I mean, there's just so many challenges of, again, equity disbursements that aren't lining up. And so I think that anything that we can do to help make sure that people can have a safe place to live while they're learning farming and agriculture practices, and then also what do they do with the land once they do have the availability to live on it, access to water, water meters and that kind of thing. We run into those problems all day. So yeah, the county could help with that.
I don't know if this is county or if this is state, you know, it's a little out of my realm, but along the lines of access, you know, down in like Pahala or that Ka'u district, you know, as it was mentioned, access to the foods, yeah, in rural and remote, like stores and things like that can be quite a challenge. But it also becomes a challenge for people that have to illegally cross to get to hunting grounds or to get access to the ocean because of these gates that are put in place. So how do, you know, supporting the private landowners in some ways, but then also how do we pair that with the regulation of gated entries so that people can hunt? You know, that's the great thing of, and I hunt too, you know, pigs, there's no antibiotics in that protein, you know, and it's also a nuisance to be honest with you for a lot of farmers as well. So we, you know, it's a win-win to me, right? I get food on my table, I help the farmers in their piece, and we help control the population. But the gate system kind of affects my access to that, to do it legally, right? I mean, I can hop the gate and all of those kind of things, but that's not what we want to perpetuate. So if there's a way to do that, or even like shoreline fishing access as well.
Thank you all so much for sharing. That concludes questions from Farah and myself. I wanted to open up to participants on the call to ask any questions or provide comments for our panelists. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hey Ash, I'll go if no one's just break the ice here. Maggie, co-chair with Vibrant Hawaii Economy Stream for Hubs. One of the things that I do when I join these meetings is sort of look where hubs can find confluence across these various streams. So, you know, we've been working with folks like Hawaii Forest and Trail, for example, to convert their tour company models to Aina-based education. You know, leveraging assets within the community. For example, if we were to have the 16 to 23-year-old age range that are aging out of foster care and all their programs, help them to come through hubs and establish some workforce trade ability, teach them construction skills, have them build tiny homes. We can take these tiny homes and park them on an orchard, park them on a farm, get folks back on the land. So like Emily mentioned, you know, they have their housing provided for while they're learning these skills to take back with them. Wellness retreats, rewriting the whole narrative on tourism just from the get-go. This is not Disneyland. This is a place where you can come and experience 11 out of 13 climate zones. You can collaborate with Airbnbs around beautiful, right on site. And we can position these tours around the whole island to learn something and actually be taking this native intelligence home with them, as opposed to coming here and thinking they're on a Disneyland vacation. So there are a lot of things that we can be doing. And also with, you know, the workforce development, I tried to put a link in there. There's some issues with the website, I think. But, you know, if we look at what Vibrant Hawaii is doing just with the trauma-informed care and actually certifying trauma mental health specialists within the community, 50 of them that will then train 10 more by December, and within 1 year have over 800 residents that are certified in mental health, we can start really looking at the problems and the barriers that hold these things in place in terms of the homelessness or whatnot. You know, even with our hubs with distributing food, we have a woman, Heidi, who is part of a paid program that comes in, but she's been helping to distribute food. She takes meals down to the homeless and knows them by name at this point. You know, so those are the kind of things, just getting boots on the ground, and every individual has their own unique set of issues and stories, and mental health is real, the trauma, the cultural trauma. I think Queen Liliuokalani Trust has really done a great job with compiling some of the data and mapping systems in some of these areas as well, that I think they're willing to share that data with folks as well. There's just so much that comes to mind, because I do see hubs as this place where every community is unique and has its own set of needs, but informed by the community, we can really start addressing that. For our hub here in Kona, Haliki'i Hub, we have 50 keiki that are registered, all in their protected little plexi places. But we do have folks that are emerging as keiki caretakers, and they go out and they water the papayas that we planted. We have art on the walls. So if a student is having an issue, you know, they go paint with Maggie on the wall, and we figure that out. You know, there's certain things, there are kids that are, I mean, the mom the other day just said, I was afraid of the call that I'm getting for you to reject my child. And we asked if he had anxiety issues. Our hub captain also, I mean, we're just sort of taking the stigma away from this mental health stuff and really just saying, no, we understand, we are gonna work with you. And this is the first time in his 10 years that a teacher is, or a makua basically, because we're not a school, is actually working with this child as opposed to just passing him through. He doesn't even know his alphabet yet, and he's 10 years old. You know, and this is not okay. And these are the things that we can address across the board. And for my mind, I'm just thinking, okay, how do we get it all together? But I really appreciate all you folks on the call today, and anything that you think we can do as hubs to help to facilitate the health and wellness initiatives moving forward. Please feel free to reach out. And I open it up to anyone else that has any questions. Thanks.
I have a question. So, you know, when we talk about resiliency, right, we never really talk about that concept yet, but I think it's a very important concept because, you know, Hawaii Island, I mean, we're very resilient, right? We just got through in Kilauea eruption, Hurricane Lane, you know, Hurricane Azelle, and we always have a way for bounce back. And so my question is, how do we, you know, with COVID, how do we bounce back bigger? How do we get on bigger bounce? Because I think we can really take advantage of our commonalities and our relationships to get on bigger bounce. So that's my question. I don't know. Get some ideas, but. So
Himo, if I could just share with you from the Vibrant Hawaii lens, you know, we took advantage of the CARES Act funding. And so we were able to activate over 30 resilience hubs, as Maggie was sharing about, around Hawaii Islands. And we're just traffic cop, right? We brought people together, we gave them tools, but it was on them to design what their hubs look like and deliver programs and services that made sense for what their community needed. So we talk about being community driven. and supported with whatever resources are available by groups like Vibrant and by government. And so we have these hubs, and we're building resilience. We're building community leaders around the island so that when CARES money does run out, we still have this network of people that we can lean on when the next disaster strikes. They can start their own pu'uhonua opunas, and they can respond and serve their community. They've got that network and that training in place. And, Danny is also a partner in providing mental health first aid, trauma-informed care. So a lot of little projects that were things that we talked about at our, like our first conference as Vibrant Hawaii back in September. We planted those seeds, and COVID presented that time for us to really take action. So that's just a little bit of the work that we're doing to build resilience in our community.
Nice. Awesome. Wow.
Hi, this is Charlene. Can I, let me put my cell phone. I think you're doing a great job. Hold on, doesn't matter. You don't have to see me. But having lived through a lot of trauma myself, and it's interesting because all the things you've talked about, for those of us who are the kupuna, the real old ones, older than the hills almost, we have grown through some of these things. And it's interesting, Kimo, you mentioned about the bigger bounce. The bigger bounce is up to the community. It's really going to be up to the community and how this group, the young ones now, what you do and with how you take it. But I like the idea you have to collect more data, because right now it's only feelings. And the infusion of the money from CARES, how are you going to sustain that? Because that's what I worry about. You stand it up, but after that, no money comes, and don't expect it next legislative session. There can be cuts already. They're talking about the 10 to 20%. So how do you sustain it? And it's the asset building that many of you have talked about. And so part of that is, really trying to dig down how to do asset building. And part of it is collecting who's doing what now, map it all out. I don't have the facility to do it anymore. I'm tired. So, if Misty, you know how to do it, Ashley obviously has the connections, Danny too, because of all of his work that he's doing statewide. And Farah, of course, you're the main driver. You have all these students that could do a lot of research. If you just collect the data, who's doing what is their focus, collect the past data in terms of what programs like the ACT, other programs like that, the task forces that focused in on mental health, serious persistent mental illness. There were, there's been task forces on agriculture, childhood issues. So now it's not ACEs anymore. It's positive childhood experiences. Flip it on the other side, right? It's not all negative. It's about how to make everything positive. So the bounce can be higher. Take advantage.
Hi, Charlene. Good to see you briefly and hear you, but you're absolutely right. When you talk about collecting data, how are we going to do that? I think the university plays a big role in that. We not only have students, but we have faculty that have the expertise in data collection, program design, and evaluation. So really, and a lot of the organizations, county government even, it takes a lot of time and resources, and again, that specific expertise to do evaluation. A lot of organizations are strapped. We don't have those resources or time in place to do really true program evaluation. So I think that partnership between the university faculty that have that expertise, students that have been educated to conduct and design program evaluation, I think that is going to be really important. And again, I brought up community engaged learning earlier. That's what I hope that my students can do. I teach a program evaluation, program planning course, and that would be a great project. Have an organization that's like, we have an awesome program. Everybody loves it, but we haven't done yet the program evaluation to prove it. Misty, can your class take this on and do our program evaluation for this whole semester? Absolutely. So it's those kind of connections, and those kind of partnerships that could possibly work.
So it's a little more theory part of it, but we always talk about resilience, and which is a good thing. But in a pono, using the definition of balanced ecosystem, there's both resilience and resistance, adaptation and repelling of a foreign threat. So like with COVID-19, we're adapting to it. We're becoming more resilient to it. But eventually, we want to be able to stand against it, right? Kuku'e to it. So I think as we go through this thing and as we move forward, we're adapting to certain things for this bigger bounce. It's also making sure that we can take a stand for certain things. So we are working collectively and cooperatively now with other folks. But as this thing passes, the resistance part that I'm looking at is that we stand on whatever traction was gained, so that cross-sector collaboration can be more of the norm, as opposed to just in situations, in times of storms, in times of where we need adaptation, and really implement it either in county charter, university practices, business practices, that we can all take this stand to, I like resilience, but I like to be resistant to things as well. And making sure that we can push back on these things so we can think 7 generations down. It's going to be a better world for our future.
Any other questions or comments? Kimo, great question. Wasn't expecting that one, but thank you.
Good.
No, it's good. So we're about to wrap up. If I just want to provide all the panelists an opportunity to give some closing mana'o, and we'll mahalo you for joining us today. We really appreciated this conversation. Kimo, can we start with you?
Okay. I think the definition of a vibrant Hawaii is measured by how well we treat the most vulnerable. That's to me the measure. I'm an advocate for the poor. I'm a community advocate, and I think we will always be measured by how well we're responding to the most vulnerable. And so let's keep that as a measure to determine how vibrant we are on this beautiful Hawaii island. Mahalo.
Thank you. Emily?
I just want to thank you all for having me on today. And I know I'm a little bit different perspective than some of the professionals that are here. But it's been really great to hear the collaborations and even what I can do in our organization to reach out to Misty and others that could maybe help Danny with our resilience and trauma-based care and thinking ahead in that. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be a part of this conversation. And I also would just like to employ us all to think about how to encourage people to take action themselves. I think that we all have a commitment to our community. We all love living here and being here. And I don't want to underestimate that when people are given a mission and they know what their next steps are, that they will help make those steps. So just finding ways to communicate those initiatives so that they can take part. So, thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Danny?
Mahalo for just letting me be part of this. I kind of am looking forward to the day where all of us can get together in the same room and share some beverages and some poke together. But I echo what everybody is saying, especially Kimo saying, it's moving towards a vibrant Hawaii. It's this collective effort and energy here and the reach of this room that is like super exciting and inspirational. And for me, the opposite of despair is hope. And there's a lot of hope in what I've seen and heard today. So mahalo nui.
Thanks, Danny. Misty?
Yeah, thank you again for allowing me to be here today. This was such an awesome couple hours we had together. And I can't remember who this quote was by or who told me this, but definitely, as community leaders or, employers, employees, whatever role we play here on this and even on this call, we have to remember that what we do, it's not our job, it's not a service, it's our obligation. And it's our obligation to the past generations, and it's our obligation to the future and of course the present. So if we keep that in mind, I have no doubt that that we will get through this and we will thrive. Thank you.
So true. Thank you all for joining us. This concludes our panel on healthcare and wellness. All of your mana'o will be used to inform our committee in our work to put together an action plan for the comprehensive economic development strategy that we will be advocating on behalf of our community when official discussions start for revision of that document. So thank you very much. We will be following up with you if we have any other questions or need more clarification or information. Thank you, everyone. It's great to see you. If you want more information and to get a recording of this video, head to vibranthawaii.org/economy. We will see you in a few weeks. Take care and aloha.
Mahalo.
Thank you.